All right, we got Hashirama with dog. Ah, fuck. All right, we got Hashirama versus the Akatsuki by my boy NC Hammer. Notice how I said Hashirama would dog the Akatsuki because Hashirama would dog the Akatsuki easily. Now, if he gets Tsukiyomi, he's over because there's a chance Itachi could set up that Tsukiyomi. Somebody could throw him the what's it called, the alley oop, and then Itachi hits him with that Tsukiyomi. Realistically, that could happen to anybody. A Tsukiyomi one shot, unless you're a Uchiha with a Master Sharingan, like Obito, Sasuke, Madara, anybody with a
Villain
Master
groups in
Sharingan.
not only Naruto, but also all of anime. Yet nowadays it feels more like they're more often than not being disrespected than respected. Now, unfortunately, this kind of thing is going to happen when every single one of your members dies some kind of horrific death, and also the universe you're supposed to take over massively outscales you the second you're gone. And thus, unfortunately, nowadays, whenever the Akatsuki are brought up, it seems as though they're only brought up to fight in somewhat ridiculous versus battles. Whether that be against each other, individual members of the Akatsuki fighting against people they never saw, or
Bro, I ain't gonna lie, the Akatsuki is hella overrated as a group. Like, bro, they didn't even have chemistry for real. The only people that had chemistry was actually, I ain't gonna say they didn't have chemistry. All the duos had chemistry, but like as a whole group together, they didn't have no chemistry. I would say the better group is the Phantom Troop. Definitely, the Phantom Troop. They're day one niggas. Like they're day ones. They came from the same city. They lost the same friend. Like, they love each other for real. Like, the Phantom Troop is a way better group than the Akatsuki. I don't care what nobody say. I don't even think nobody would disagree with me on that.
Same time as, or in the worst case scenarios, the entirety of the Akatsuki versus somebody who is way more powerful than each individual member. And, well, unfortunately for the Akatsuki, that last one's exactly what we're doing here today. Because today, I want to answer a question that's been floating around the interwebs for years now. Today, I want to put to bed who would win in a fight between the Akatsuki and Hashirama. Yes, you heard me right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking Hashirama versus the entirety of the Akatsuki.
Bro, Madara was stomp the Akatsuki. Madara before all the fucking the Hashirama homosexual upgrades with him being obsessed with him, taking his DNA. Alive Madara back in the day is slamming the Akatsuki.
Simultaneously, a death battle that's sure to be a lot closer than even you realize. But before we get to starting this 10v1, guys,
I don't really think it's close unless Itachi gets a Tsukiyomi off. Like, Itachi, I feel like it's like the real threat.
Every single week, guys, you can go
because what are they doing against the Sage Mode? What's it called? A Thousand Hands Buddha art ghetto statue, whatever the fuck it's called. I can't think of it right now. The Thousand Hand Buddha. What are they doing against that?
Like a completely absurd hypothetical fight. I mean, after all, the Akatsuki were the group of notorious villains in Naruto who were able to bring about the Eye of the Moon plan.
But Obito is in there though.
So surely, if
I forgot Obito is. How did I forget about Obito? Okay, it might not actually be like a super dog walking now that Obito is in there. But I still think Hashirama got that. I think it's like 70-30.
To rather easily defeat Hashirama, right? I mean, he's just one man. And the Akatsuki
he's a one-man army.
Very impressive fighters before. However, this fight is a lot closer than
not compared to Hashirama.
In order to establish just how close this fight actually is, we have to paint the picture of exactly how strong everyone involved is and understand how their weaknesses may turn into strengths or how their strengths might expose other people's weaknesses. So in order to begin the painting of this rather large image, let's start talking about the strengths and the weaknesses of every single
I don't care if they got Obito. I think Hashirama is murdering the Akatsuki.
From weakest to strongest. That is, say, let's establish how strong they are and how their kits would be advantageous in a battle against Hashirama. And thus, the first member of the Akatsuki we're going to be talking about, because he is undoubtedly the weakest member of the Akatsuki.
And he's not getting his hands on Hashirama,
That's not
bro.
an opinion, it's a fact.
Bro, Hashirama could create wood clones equal. He can make wood clones that are stronger than all these motherfuckers individually. And then they can handle that shit. Like, that's how strong Hashirama is and how much chakra he has. He can make wood clones stronger than like 10 strong people. Like, Hashirama is
the weakest member of the Akatsuki.
he's a god,
that does
pretty
not
much.
mean he's weak. He's still
God of Shinobi, literally.
Strong,
That's his
actually.
nickname.
See,
Like, come
ignoring the
on.
whole immortality thing for just one moment, and I know that's a big ignore on account of the fact that it's basically his entire kit. Hidan kind of boils down to a Kenjutsu and Taijutsu specialist. That is to say that outside of his blood ritual that allows for him to transfer any wound he does to himself over to whoever's blood he's consumed, we never see him use anything even remotely close to ninjutsu. So Hidan's entire kit kind of boils down to one ability. Now, it is a great ability. However, once you understand how Hidan's kit works, he's kind of cooked. Once Shikamaru understood that Hidan needed his blood in order to kill him, he was able to do exactly what you should do if you're fighting against Hidan. Keep distance, and if you can, trick him into believing that he's taken your blood when in actuality it's somebody else's. Now, if we're being real, in a battle between Hashirama and Hidan does start at a kind of advantage, in the same way that Hidan starts at an advantage against anybody he fights against. See, because as Hidan is the only pure-blooded Joshinist in existence, Hashirama would have no reason to understand how Hidan's abilities work. And therefore, if at any point during this fight against the entirety of the Akatsuki, if either Hidan or any other member of the Akatsuki cuts Hashirama and gets his blood, Hidan...
But how are they going to do that, though? Bro, how would they do that? I mean... shit. Hold on. I don't think they're touching Hashirama, but if they did, for some reason, touch Hashirama and they got fucking goddamn Hidan somewhere and he just gets a drip of his blood, it's over. That's true. That is super true. I never thought about it like that. But how would they get their hands on Hashirama though? He's Hashirama.
Use that blood to inflict grievous wounds on Hashirama. And you might be thinking to yourself,
like
right
he no
there, well,
diff
sounds like
all 9-tailed beasts.
Technically, you're not really wrong. Yeah, basically, all the Akatsuki needs to do is get some of Hashirama's blood, get that blood to Hidan, let him lick it, and then he can just start stabbing himself.
But like, let's just say Hashirama knows like everything going into battle. They're cooked.
In the chest repeatedly. However, how repeatedly Hidan's actually able to stab himself in the chest, we don't know. We do know that he's immortal, but like his wounds do need to
But Hashirama auto heals though.
Considering the fact that Hashirama would have to contend with 9 other members of the Akatsuki, if Hidan, whose ability doesn't have an effective range that we're aware of, was able to get Hashirama's blood and scamper away while the other 9 members of the Akatsuki were to hold him off, there's a good shot that Hidan would be able to at least slow down Hashirama a fair amount. See, because here's the thing. Hashirama's healing capability has been compared to that of Tsunade using mitotic regeneration without the hand seals. That is to say, if hypothetically Hashirama was stabbed through the heart, it probably wouldn't kill him. He'd heal from the wound instantly. All but immediately. However, while the hole in his heart was healing, Hashirama would be slowed. He could even be stopped directly in his tracks. And if Hashirama is slowed down by a flurry of injuries,
bro, that's so overpowered, just being able to just heal like that automatically with no hand signs. Bro, Naruto should be able to do that. Adult Naruto. Like, why is Adult Naruto among humans is still top of the verse, even without the 9 tails? But why is Naruto in his base not more OP? Like, Naruto should have healing powers. Well, yeah, he has hella chakra and shit like that, but he needs some kind of just something that makes him more just of a monster.
To him by Hidan, who technically doesn't have to be anywhere near him and therefore could be out of the reach of Hashirama from grabbing him and stopping him from doing any more damage to him.
I just feel like Adult Naruto is underwhelming. The threats are stronger though, way stronger. I get it, but I just feel like he's underwhelming. Just
allow for the stronger members of the Akatsuki to dive
like
in on top of him and
just
finish him
cooler.
off. And thus this begs the question, could Hidan or
and
anybody
his
in the
design
Akatsuki
sucks
draw
too,
blood
and
from
Sasuke's.
Hashirama? Well, I can tell you right now,
Boruto art in general is
Hidan.
trash.
Yes, Hidan was able to trade blows with an early Shippuden Kakashi, and yes, he was established to be much stronger than Asuma, who was chosen as one of the 12 pillars of the Land of Fire, specifically
Asuma
chosen
is so
to protect
trash.
the daimyo.
How you the
which
third
implies that at
Hokage's
some level,
son being
Asuma
this
was one of
sorry?
the 12 strongest fighters in the Land of Fire. Now, these
That's
two feats
cap.
alone mean that Hidan's AP is somewhere in the region of city level. And considering the fact that he was able to keep up not only with Asuma, but also an early Shippuden Kakashi, means that his speed is somewhere in the region of sub-relativistic. However, even when
Tired
impressive sounding
Kakashi,
stats
low-key.
like
That
that's not gonna allow for
Kakashi,
Hidan
didn't that
to hit
Kakashi
literally
just absorb some
anywhere
lightning?
near Hashirama. So the blood from
That Kakashi absorbs from lightning, I believe. He absorbed lightning, I think. Or did he do that after? But I know he took that kick from from Kakazu, though. That was a vicious kick. And he used the Chidori, too. And he had the Sharingan on.
Somewhere else will be our next member of the Akatsuki we're going to talk about Sasori.
That's lame.
Did it be Konan? No, it shouldn't be Konan.
Hell no, it shouldn't be
beat
Konan.
Sasori in a fight. And yes, I know it happens
It's not
in a video
canon,
game.
but
And therefore
still.
it's technically non-canon.
But still.
Kishimoto co-writes all of the video games. And this is technically the only explanation we have for how Sasori ended up in the Akatsuki.
Yeah.
So far as I'm concerned, in a 1v1, Konan beats Sasori. But anyways, what can Sasori do in this fight? Well,
Nothing.
not much.
Not
See, some
fucking
people,
nothing.
At least in my opinion, scale Sasori way too high. On account of the fact that Sasori killed the third Kazekage, and the third Kazekage is often talked about as the strongest Kazekage in the history of the sand. And therefore, as the third Kazekage is talked about as being the strongest Kazekage in the history of the sand, people believe that the third Kazekage must have been stronger than even the strongest iterations of Gaara we ever
hell
see
no.
in Naruto. And listen, this isn't the craziest idea of all time because the third Kazekage had access to iron sand, which is still, to this day, deep into Boruto, the strongest jutsu to come out of the hidden sand. However, literally, anybody with a brain understands that Gaara by the end of Shippuden is much stronger than the third Kazekage could have ever possibly been. Why? Oh, I don't know, because Sasori was able to kill him. This is also important on account of the fact that after Sasori kills the third Kazekage, he turns him into a puppet who retains the iron sand technique. And that third Kazekage puppet becomes one of the strongest in Sasori's 300 puppet arsenal. However, Sasori's 300 puppet arsenal is barely a match for Granny Chiyo using effectively 11 puppets, her 10 Chikamatsu puppets, and Sakura. And Granny Chiyo's 10 Chikamatsu puppets are talked about as being powerful to take down an entire castle by themselves. And taking down an entire castle isn't necessarily the most impressive feat when talking about things that happen in the Naruto universe. And here's the thing, while Sasori was fighting a 1v2 against one of the greatest puppet users of all time and his grandmother, Granny Chiyo, and a post-time skip training Sakura, who was a legitimate threat coming out of the time skip, and he did decide to kill himself in the end, a pre-strength of 100 Sakura and an 85-year-old puppet master were enough to counter his strengths. And even if he did take himself out of that battle, they were at the very least an even match for him. Now, with all that said, Sasori does pretty easily scale to island level AP, and on account of the fact that he was able to, without looking, dodge an attack from a Kurama-influenced Naruto during the Shippuden bridge arc, implies that he is faster than Hidan, who also admits that he's the slowest out of the Akatsuki, and therefore he is sub-relativistic to possibly relativistic speeds. But with all that said, what does Sasori bring to this fight? Well, two things: volume and poison. Unfortunately, those two things are two things that probably wouldn't affect Hashirama all that much. See, it's a well-noted fact that Tsunade spent the majority of her time whenever she was involved in one of the great Shinobi World Wars counteracting the poison of Granny Chiyo, which implies that the poisons used by Granny Chiyo and Sasori can be countered. Considering the fact that Hashirama was probably better at medical ninjutsu, at least on himself, than Tsunade was for anyone, including herself, it stands to reason that basically any poison that was injected into his body would be metabolized almost instantly. And as for the volume, aka the 300 puppets that Sasori's able to control, destroying these puppets would be like crushing ants to Hashirama. They would legitimately be no challenge. So as for what Sasori brings to this battle,
Kid Hashirama
nothing,
got that.
Really, Hashirama would kill him in mere moments. Now, after Sasori, we do unfortunately have Konan. And Konan, unfortunately, is only ever involved in 2 canon fights, one of which she had Batman-level prep time to get ready for. And furthermore, unfortunately for Konan, the best indicator of her true level of strength, that is to say that the strength that she actually has in a fight where she doesn't have weeks to prepare for somebody whose ability she understands perfectly to fall into a series of traps, is Konan's battle against Jiraiya, which is, well, anticlimactic. See, a non-Seijo Jiraiya enters into a 1v1 against Konan. And while Konan is able to beat back his fire release using her dance, the Shikigami, which is impressive considering the fact that it's paper versus fire, Jiraiya just rolls out of the way of the paper barrage, hits her with a toad oil bomb, and then grabs her with his hair. And if it weren't for the intervention of the animal path after Jiraiya grabbed her, that probably would have been wraps for Konan. And while losing to Jiraiya is hardly a mark against you, Jiraiya didn't even struggle. He was never injured, he was never pressed, he didn't use Sage Mode, he didn't call Ma and Pa, he used like his 3 most basic jutsu and Konan was defeated. And well, yes, Konan is able to injure Obito. I mean, she literally blows off one of his arms.
Yeah, Batman level really prep time.
Konan injuring Obito, I mean, like, yes, she's the one who puts the explosive seals in amongst her paper that makes up her body, and she was absolutely the one who made this strategy because she understood how Obito's abilities work, which speaks to her level of genius, which is often undersold. But like, Konan blowing off Obito's arm using explosive seals is more the explosive seal and less the Konan. It speaks more to her intellect than it does her AP. However, though, Konan is able to produce 600 billion paper bombs and literally split an entire leg.
I don't think people realize how much 600 billion is. That is a lot.
A small ocean that she casts Obito
like, imagine
down.
having $600 billion, bro. $600 billion and you don't pay taxes. If you had $6 billion, bro, and you was greedy as fuck, you can pay less taxes than somebody who works a regular job and makes $60,000 a year. Ain't that crazy? That's America.
Into to his presumed death. And controlling these 600 billion paper bombs is technically an extension of her Dance of the Shikigami ability. And therefore, on account of the fact that this jutsu should have killed Obito, and on account of the fact that she was able to blow off one of his arms, a lot of people do end up saying that Konan's AP is somewhere in the region of small country level. Ties into the fact that she was able to react to and dodge and or block attacks from both Sasori and Jiraiya. And like all the other Akatsuki members you talked about up until this moment, her speed falls somewhere in the region of sub-relativistic. However, unfortunately for Konan, this high-end estimation of her AP can really only happen with an extraordinary amount of prep time and a deep understanding of her opponent. But it does show if hypothetically Konan was given enough time and was given a window to attack Hashirama, she could do a fair bit of damage. So that's what she brings to the equation. Out of all of the members of the Akatsuki, she has one of the most impressive damaging feats. And therefore, it's not crazy to say that Konan packs one of the bigger punches in the Akatsuki. Now, after Konan, we have an addition that a lot of other people probably wouldn't have added onto this list, but I'm trying to help the Akatsuki out here, because after Konan, we have Akatsuki Orochimaru, who we unfortunately know basically nothing about. Pretty much the only battle that Akatsuki Orochimaru has ever shown being in is the battle he has against Itachi, which isn't even really a battle. Itachi literally no diffs Orochimaru to the point where Orochimaru has to break their own finger to break out.
Bro, this literally happened in real time while Itachi was 13, and people think Itachi was scared of Jiraiya back in the Hidden Leaf or somewhere, wherever they was at in the Land of Fire, back during season 4 of Naruto, bro. Itachi and Kisame were not talking about Jiraiya when they were saying, if we go up against him, we'll both die. He was talking about the Nine Tails. He was not talking about Jiraiya. If you read the manga and you have context clues, you can tell. Itachi being scared of Jiraiya makes no sense. Or Kisame. I think Kisame got that against Jiraiya, if you've been for real.
Genjutsu, because they're about to be consumed by Itachi. Now, obviously, we know prior to joining the Akatsuki, Orochimaru was at least powerful enough to survive a battle against Hanzo the Salamander and get the title of the legendary Sannin. We know that all three of the Sannin are actively compared to each other in terms of strength, and that Orochimaru was in active consideration for the role of the 4th Hokage, meaning that around that time, he was probably comparably powerful to Minato. We also know that Anbu Kakashi stood no chance against him. However, with all that in mind, it is still kind of
he was scared as a grown man.
Exactly how powerful this version of Orochimaru is. See, we know that Orochimaru was still engaging in unethical human experimentation, which is what got them driven out of Konoha in the first place. We know that they had created Yamato, they'd given Danzo Shin Uchiha's arm. However, Orochimaru was still years away from perfecting Edo Tensei. So unfortunately for Orochimaru, the idea of them busting out any Edo Tensei soldiers probably shouldn't even be considered for this fight. So how powerful is this iteration of Orochimaru? I don't know, like maybe 3/4 as powerful as the version that fought against Hiruzen. So let's say city to island level AP with sub-relativistic speeds. And unfortunately for Orochimaru, really nothing that is threatening to Hashirama.
Nothing.
Like, at all. They would have Manda, Kusanagi Blade, they'd be able to
nigga, what is Manda gonna do when he captured all 9-tailed beasts? I mean, 8 of them.
And neck, nothing that's going to be of any
Captured
consequence to Hashirama. So unfortunately, Orochimaru's
I know I said 9 earlier,
consideration in this fight. Though knowing Orochimaru, they probably survive. However, after Orochimaru, we have the first actual person who could maybe kill Hashirama, because up next we have Deidara. Now, Deidara is engaged in a bunch of pretty impressive fights, like his battle against Garo, where he was able to claim victory by making a C2 bomb so large that it was going to wipe out the entirety of the Sand Village, and therefore, instead of protecting himself, Garo elected to protect the village. And considering the fact that Deidara was going to be able to wipe out an entire ninja village with just one attack, that puts Deidara very easily at city level plus AP. But Deidara's by far and away most impressive battle is his last battle, or at least his last battle while he was still alive. His battle against Sasuke, where he showed us his
and people think that Sasuke had plot armor in his fight. Oh, look at the animation. Sasuke in his, he don't even have the tomoes in his eyes. Like, I'm noticing how bad the animation is right here. But that's another topic. People think Sasuke in his fight had plot armor. No, Sasuke in his fight had a fucking 200 IQ. That's what he had. He had the bag and everything to perfectly counter Deidara. This was not plot armor, bro. This was just pure Sasuke being the GOAT.
Impressive moves. C4 and C0.
He just had the perfect bag to counter him, bro.
Allows for Deidara to inflate an explosive clay clone until it pops like a balloon into millions of microscopic and very breathable little explosive Deidaras. And thus anybody who inhales any of this explosive clay disintegrates immediately. The other most impressive move we saw from Deidara was his C0, a technique that cost
Deidara
that
his
fight,
life, bro. That's just such a good fight.
His biggest ever explosion. An explosion so large that it's been rather consistently calculated to be somewhere in the region of small country level plus. However, there's two problems, one for each jutsu. The first problem being that Hashirama knows every single one of the elemental releases, including lightning release. And if Sasuke can figure out how to annul the effects of C4 by electrocuting his entire body and therefore nullifying the explosive release of the explosive clay in his body, I would bet you my entire bank.
Okay, but here's the thing though. The only reason Sasuke knew it was Earth release was because he had a Sharingan, and a Sharingan, you see things other motherfuckers don't. Sasuke saw the Earth hand signs and he understood that it was an Earth sign or that it was an Earth element jutsu. Hashirama don't got that. Maybe Hashirama would know the hand sign and see the pattern and be like, oh yeah, that's Earth style. But Sasuke had the Sharingan, and that's why Sasuke knew, okay, Earth style he's using, lightning style I'm going to use, and I'm going to counter him.
Hashirama could do the same. And the second problem is that Sasuke was able to survive C0 by summoning Manda to him and making Manda eat the explosion, which killed Manda. And being wrapped up in Mandas enough to survive a C0 explosion, then Hashirama's wood domes, which have survived tailed beast balls from the full version of Kurama, would also very easily be able to survive a C0 explosion. So unfortunately, Deidara also kind of brings nothing to the equation here. Now, I'm not saying that if Hashirama was put in some kind of disadvantageous situation that C4 or C0 could not kill him, that is, say if he wasn't prepared, but there's really nothing that tells us that if Hashirama had the time to react to either a C4 or a C0, he wouldn't survive it. However, even though Deidara doesn't bring anything to the table, maybe our next Akatsuki member, Kakuzu, does. Let me just stop me right there.
I don't think so.
No, he doesn't.
Fuck no.
Beat the brakes off Kakuzu.
Oh yeah, I forgot he beat the brakes off of him already. I literally forgot that. I was gonna say, yeah, he don't bring nothing, and then I just remembered, yeah, this dude got bodied by Hashirama and then got removed from his village.
So bad he had to leave his village. There is nothing that Kakuzu can do that Hashirama cannot do 100 times better. Any elemental release, taijutsu, long-range attacks, or regeneration that Kakuzu has access to, Hashirama has the clear advantage every single time. Kakuzu is a glorified taijutsu merchant who can split into elemental clones so weak that 10-10 is able to destroy them. And yes, she had the Basho-sen, but still, Kakuzu isn't even a distraction. He's not buying you 10 seconds against Hashirama. It's over, it's wraps, he's done, pack it up, all four hearts shattered, go to bed zombie duo. But Nick, how about we start talking about the real members of the Akatsuki,
some
those
real
with
threats.
actual strength, like, you know, Kisame. And yeah, when we get to the Kisame level of the Akatsuki, that is, say, the top 4 members, things do start to get a little bit more interesting. I mean,
it starts getting scary.
Is comparable to literally
only
one other person in the history of Naruto when it comes to water release, and that would be
Tobirama's
Hashirama's little brother, Tobirama. However, unfortunately for Kisame, he has not only acknowledged the fact that he is weaker than Itachi multiple times, and Itachi does not touch the power of a peak power Madara with a 10-foot pole, but even if, hypothetically, Kisame did bust out his strongest move, which is fusing with Amihara and covering the entire battlefield in water, like he did in his battle against Killer Bee and my guy, and Kisame was able to effectively trap Hashirama inside of this water bubble, Hashirama's true 1,000 hands Bodhisattva is bigger than a large mountain. I mean, it literally dwarfs Korra. It's so big, it dwarfs
I literally, quite literally said, what are they doing against this right here? Like, they're not doing nothing against this. Once he activates this right here, it's over.
Around it. I'm not kidding. Cody, show an image of True 1000 Hands from the manga. The mountains around this jutsu are knee-high on the bottom stop.
See, and I knew it was big as fuck, but I didn't know it was that big because I didn't read that far in the Naruto's manga. Like, I stopped at, like, chapter 500, I think, or 400 or something. I need to read the rest of it, but I didn't even know it was that big. But like I said, what are they doing against that? They're not doing nothing against that.
3,000 meters tall. That's more than 10,000 feet. Yes, obviously, Kisame was able to cover an entire forest in a big old water bubble that even Killer Bee couldn't swim out of. But there is no way that he has the ability to cover the entirety of the 1,000 hands Bodhisattva in water. And even if
Hashirama, I don't think he can activate that while fucking drowning. I don't think. He would have to activate it beforehand, which I think he would, because he sees it's like 9 of them coming at him, so I think he would.
And all of the hands are extendable. Hashirama could still sit on top of it and punch Kisame in his own water. And let's not forget that wood release is half water release. And while I do admit that Samehada would be useful in this battle against Hashirama because somebody
how is he getting Samehada on Hashirama though. You're not cutting Hashirama with Samihara, bro. You're not.
There's a fair to decent chance that the second that Samihara got a taste of Hashirama's chakra, it would
He would
switch
flip over to
sides.
him.
Also, in order to siphon off Hashirama's chakra, Hashirama would have to be cut. And we've already established that if the Akatsuki managed to cut Hashirama, that's kind of already their win condition. So ultimately, at the end of the day, Kisame does nothing. He'd be like a good Kenjutsu match for a non-Sage mode Hashirama. Because I'd like to remind all of you that Hashirama is a Kenjutsu master. And every single one of the squabbles we've ever seen him have with Madara, he's usually got an entire scroll full of weapons waiting to be used. But the second that Hashirama busts out Sage mode or any kind of wood release, bye, Kisame, your shark fin soup. But what about the person that Kisame openly admitted was stronger than him? Itachi. I mean, he's got the Totsuka blade, he's got Tsukiyomi, he's got Amaterasu.
But I know he got Tsukiyomi and shit, like I said before. And Amaterasu, we're not gonna talk about Amaterasu. He's not hitting nobody with that. Who's not just big and slow. You're not hitting nobody with that. But Hashirama literally grew up fighting Madara and other Uchihas who have visual or ocular genjutsu. So maybe he does know to not look at Itachi's eyes at all while fighting.
He's got the Yada mirror, and
So
he does have all those things, and he is by far and away the fastest combatant we've talked about yet. I mean, he was able to speed blitz KCM1 Naruto and
easily.
Killer B. He is easily FTL. Not to mention he was able to be 1/3 of the power that was able to destroy a peak power Chibaku Tensei from Edo Nagato, and he was able to manhandle a Dragon Sage Kabuto. His AP at peak power scales very easily to somewhere in the region of small country level, if you, of course, take into account his Edo feats, which I'm going to be doing, which is technically an advantage for Itachi because Itachi was at his strongest while he was in Edo Tensei form, and I'm going to be taking his and Nagato's feats into account here because I'm going to be taking Hashirama's Edo feats into account here, and that's a massive advantage for both Nagato and Itachi on account of the fact that Hashirama came back weaker as an Edo Tensei form, but both Nagato and Itachi came back stronger. However, unfortunately for Itachi, Hashirama literally cut his teeth fighting against the ghost of the Uchiha. And if you don't think that Madara had access to insanely high-level genjutsu, you're fooling yourself. Every Sharingan user at least has access to the base version of Sharingan Genjutsu, which scales up in strength as their Sharingan progresses through its numerous forms. And while Madara did say that his Sharingan was similar to that of Sasuke, who we do rarely see use Genjutsu, that doesn't mean he can't use Genjutsu.
And bro, Sasuke is a Genjutsu beast. But I wish we would see him use it more, but I guess that's not his preferred way of fighting.
At an insanely high level. Sasuke literally out-genjutsus one of the few remaining members of the Shinoiki clan who have a Kekkei Genkai that boosts their genjutsu ability. And thus either genjutsu didn't work against Hashirama or Hashirama knew how to avoid genjutsu when fighting against a Sharingan user.
Hey, it probably didn't work because maybe he has too much chakra to control. That's also a factor. That might be a thing. That Hashirama has too much chakra to control, so you can't genjutsu the man.
Because so far as we know, Madara never tries to use genjutsu on Hashirama. As for Amaterasu, not only could Hashirama very easily dodge Amaterasu, it's been dodged by people much slower than him. Any part of Hashirama that's hit by Amaterasu, we could just cut off and regrow. His healing factor was better than Tsunade's with the strength of 100 seal and mitotic regeneration. And as for Itachi's Susanoo weapons, they are, minus his Magatama, unfortunately, all short range. And considering the fact that Hashirama could strip
Bro, he literally bodied Nine Tails covered Susanoo. Perfect Susanoo, by the way. So Itachi's fucking Susanoo is not doing nothing.
Perfect Susanoo off Kurama, I'd say that Itachi's not even humanoid Susanoo stands no chance. So when it boils down to it, Itachi is nothing more than a possible finishing move on Hashirama using the Totsuka blade. Now after Itachi is where we finally get our first real competitor in Nagato, who will unfortunately for him have to do the majority of the heavy lifting in this battle. See, a crippled Nagato using his Devapath was able to flatten Konoha, the biggest out of any of the hidden villages in the Naruto universe. And his Chibaku Tensei was able to overpower a six-tailed version of Naruto, and was only broken when Naruto awoke to 8 tails of Kurama, almost fully manifesting him, meaning that his AP is easily the strongest out of anyone we've talked about today, clocking in at a whopping country level. Ties into the fact that
Bro, I'll be thinking to myself, people, I mean, narratively, Obito is over Nagato, but in terms of destructive capability, bro, Nagato is way over. Destructive capability and raw power, Madara, I mean, Nagato is way over fucking Obito in terms of just raw power. Obito got the hacks, but Nagato is raw power. I still think it's a chance that Nagato could beat Obito in a one-on-one. Orange Mask Obito anyway.
Nagato could keep up with
Orange
KCM1
mask.
Naruto, and his speed is relativistic. And considering the fact that it took the combined power of an Edo Itachi, Killer Bee, and Naruto to destroy Chibaku Tensei from Edo Nagato, it's not crazy to assume that Nagato's Chibaku Tensei could kill Hashirama, as Hashirama's peak strength is often compared to KCM2 Naruto. However, unfortunately for Nagato, a reincarnated version of Madara with infinite chakra, infinite regeneration, 2 Rinnegan, and Hashirama's cells still lost to a weaker than peak Hashirama. Oh, but Nick, Edo Hashirama still has all the benefits of Tensei. I mean, like infinitely refilling chakra and infinite regeneration, the two
don't
things
even
that he
need that.
already had while he was alive.
You don't need
so I
that.
don't think that Nagato would fare in a battle against somebody who was able to beat a stronger version of him, who not only had access to the Rinnegan, but also access to the Sharingan and all of its Mangekyo Sharingan abilities. Not well. However, with the introduction of Chibaku Tensei, we have maybe the first straight-up jutsu that could kill Hashirama if used correctly. However, that does raise the question why Madara didn't try to use Chibaku Tensei against Hashirama, when we know damn well that he had access to it. Was it because he didn't want to? Was it because he knew it wouldn't work? Well, we can't really say. But if Madara didn't try to use one of his stronger
no real
abilities
way to
against his
know.
eternal rival,
They
it
just didn't
kind
write
of
it like
tells you
that.
everything you need to know about the effectiveness of that jutsu against said eternal rival. Now, Nagato's chakra absorption ability could become slightly problematic. However, I'm not entirely sure that the chakra absorption ability of the Rinnegan would work against wood release, on account of the fact that wood release is a physical construct and not a true elemental release like lightning release or fire release or a Rasengan. You know, the kind of things that we see often absorbed by the absorption ability of the Rinnegan. I believe that Momoshiki's Rinnegan palms have once absorbed wood release, if I'm not mistaken, but he's in Otsu.
Bro, when has wood release been in Boruto for him to do that? I don't recall wood release ever being in Boruto for him to absorb wood release through his fucking Rinnegan palm.
And who's to say that his ability works exactly the same as Nagato's? And even if hypothetically Nagato is able to absorb
Alright, let's
wood
get to the
release,
last person. I gotta go work out.
Akatsuki had some kind of problem. Hashirama has the ability to put himself 10 at the kill Hashirama.
Alright, I don't even care no more. Pretty much Hashirama stomps the Akatsuki, that's all. And bye.